Episodes 5 through 8 of Ahsoka was some of the Star Wars soup many fans were expecting in this series. It continued to give me the things I was enjoying, but it did continue to struggle in some of the ways I felt it was in previous episodes. But nothing is so bad that it took away from the enjoyment I had watching the series. If you want to skip around in this video, I will have timestamps in the description, and if you enjoy Star Wars content, be sure to subscribe. I'll also be doing videos and shorts for Loki Season 2. Anyway, let's talk about some of the positives about the back half of the season, starting with episode 5. Everyone calls it the Anakin episode, but it was so much more than that. It wasn't just member berries, which is something I love and hate South Park for. It is funny, and I still use the term myself, but some people go overboard and just say it because they don't understand what's going on, and they just think it's an easy insult. Having a Clone Wars flashback was something that the Obi-Wan show could have probably benefited from. It also fits perfectly into the Ahsoka show, and it was a great way to show Anakin and Ahsoka for those who haven't seen much of the animated series. Hayden Christensen and Ariana Greenblatt had a great dynamic as Anakin and Snips. This is also because Hayden did the research on the animated series role and incorporated it into his performance. Hayden's moves with the lightsaber were great, and Ariana Greenblatt was actually very impressive against the Mandalorians as well. Just because something is familiar doesn't make it member berries that isn't serving the story. Anyway, it was just the perfect amount of member berries for me. Ahsoka's changing of attitude was nice to see throughout the season, and this was the moment where it all started. Episode 6 finally introduced us to Thrawn and Ezra, and I really liked pretty much everything about both of them. Thrawn's look was great, and obviously Lars Mikkelsen's voice has become iconic for Rebels fans as Thrawn. His facial expressions and looks are all great, and we see how great an actor he really is. I love that his story is connected to the Night Sister witches, finally getting more Clone War stuff into live action. Again, not member berries, satisfying inclusions of something we knew before and being able to have an impact going forward. It's great. Ezra, played by Iman Desfondi, was also really good. I maybe had one minor nitpick with how his eyes looked at first, because I thought they were just so blue. It was almost like looking into the ocean. But I think I either became used to it, or they just didn't look as bright later on. Either way, I liked how he looked overall, and he's acting really great as Ezra. Episode 7 had some really fun action and cool moments, but it also changed the direction of Baylan and Shin's story, which I did not see coming. I really liked that Baylan and Shin were not entirely loyal to Thrawn. They definitely followed orders, but obviously Baylan was going to part ways with Thrawn at some point. I just didn't think it would end up going down the way that it did, and I thought Baylan and Shin would end up sticking together. I guess they could reunite next season, and we'll still see about that. And it seemed like Shin maybe was going to switch sides at one point, but I'm not so sure that will happen. Episode 8 was an even more action-packed episode. Though the best scene was not action, it was actually when Ezra was building his lightsaber with Hu Yang. Maybe the best scene in the entire series for me. It gave us exposition for not just Ezra and Kanan, but also for Ahsoka and Sabine. Sabine does also finally unlock her potential, which is great to see. I have a video I'm making that will cover all of my favorite hints that Sabine was Force sensitive all the way back in Rebels. Stay tuned for that. The way everyone's story ends assures us that there's plenty more story to tell. The setup for next season is pretty great. Thrawn escapes to Dathomir with the Night Sister witches. Ezra made it back to the main galaxy and can be reunited with Hera, Jason, maybe Zeb, possibly Luke. Then Ahsoka and Sabine are trapped for maybe the whole season, and they can make it back in time for the movie. And it's possible that their story can connect back to Baylan, who clearly has something important going on if he's chasing the Mortis gods or something related to them. Only a 10-second scene with Baylan is able to spark up so much theorizing on possibilities it has me excited. Now, even though I don't have a long list of complaints, there are still a few issues I would like to talk about. In my episode 1 through 4 review, I said that there was a lack of exposition, and I still stand by that. I mentioned how the best scene in the series for me was Ezra building his lightsaber, and that's because it was able to explain something we needed to hear about in episode 1 or maybe 2. Basically the whole season we've been missing information on Sabine's backstory and why Ahsoka left her, and everything with her family on Mandalore. I think the only reference we got was from Baylan in episode 4, but if you cough, you'll miss it, and it was such a brief mention. The emotional resonance of Sabine finally unlocking her power would have been a much stronger moment if we had a similar scene earlier in the season talking about all of those struggles. I know Ezra can't be there, but Hu Yang, Hera, and Ahsoka could have been. Now, I'm not someone who was anti-Sabine or anything. She's one of my favorite characters going back to Rebels, and I'm glad she finally unlocked her power. But it would have hit home a little harder if the story was told to us in a different way, if the exposition was not held on to all season. Sabine also never had to explain anything to Ezra, and we barely saw what she did explain. It just felt like there was more potential there. My only other complaint, other than a lack of exposition and story structure, was something with Thrawn. Now I know I already said how much I like Thrawn, but only one thing really bothered me, and it wasn't until the end of the season. He never really got to own anybody. He was menacing and made me feel like he was dangerous, but he never proved it all that much. I know there's plenty of story to tell, and killing off a main character already was kinda unlikely, but I guess I was expecting him to at least destroy some New Republic ships or something. We've seen what Dave Filoni can do when setting up a character's death, like with Kanan. I just hope we do eventually get that with some of these characters, and maybe even all of them. I know it would suck for them to die, but we do know that they don't appear anywhere around the sequels. So I think that Filoni can really capitalize and give his characters an epic send-off. Characters like Zeb and Hera are the only ones that I could see making it through, but all of the Jedi like Ezra, Ahsoka, and Sabine would either need to sacrifice themselves or not be in the galaxy. And I don't really want them to just be sidelined again so they can hop into the Rey movie. It seems like it would be a cop-out. For me, the last show I felt really strongly for was Mandalorian Season 2. The Book of Boba Fett wasn't really what I was expecting, and it kinda brought down Mando Season 3 as well with the conjoined storylines. Obi-Wan had its moments, but it felt like it was a little too low budget for what it should have been. Originally supposed to be a movie and then extended into a show, and I don't feel like they added the budget there as well. Andor was pretty solid and I liked it for what it was, but it's not trying to be anything more than an origin story for a pretty minor character we already know his ending. Don't get me wrong, it's a really great and insanely well made and well written show. It makes me actually really hopeful for what Disney Plus is capable of with Star Wars from a production standpoint. But we should continue to support creators like Dave Filoni, Jon Favreau, and Tony Gilroy. Even if everything isn't the way that you want it, it's definitely a better step into the right direction. And I think that Dave and Jon specifically try to stay true to George Lucas's true vision and ideas for Star Wars. You would never get the Mortis gods from anyone else. In conclusion, Season 1 of Ahsoka was really good for me. Probably a solid 7.5 out of 10. I've watched all of Rebels and the Clone Wars, so maybe that's why I'm more forgiving, but I think it's definitely a step in the right direction when trying to connect all of Star Wars. What did you think of Ahsoka Season 1, and how have you ranked Disney Plus Star Wars in general? Let me know down in the comments below, and make sure to hit the like and subscribe. Hope I see you in the next video. Goodbye, and may the Force be with you.